contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
And now, my friend, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it. I know you're very busy, a lot going on in your world.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. No, always, always my pleasure to make time. Important show you got
Hold
here.
on, I've got this. Sorry, there was something rolling there on the sound, but go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I was saying it's my pleasure. Yeah, definitely a lot going on. It's busy times, so
Yeah.
world
So,
changing.
what would you like to get out to the public here? You're very close to the Trump side of things. You're very close to the Israeli government. What do people need to know about what's happening on the ground in the Middle East right now?
I mean that this war is. I mean, this is a historic point right now in history. I mean, this is
Mhm,
not just a looking at it in a very minute way, removing nuclear weapons in Iran.
mhm,
I mean,
mhm,
this is a game changing. There's ramifications that will, I mean, forever change the dynamics of the Middle East and the world order, possibly. I mean, this affects Russia. This affects China. I mean, there are tremendous implications of how this war literally ends.
mhm,
I mean, right now, Israel is completely dominant over the skies. It's really hitting a lot of its nuclear program, and I mean, there's a lot of surprises. Let's just say that Israel did not go into this operation. I can tell you that much. Also, it's very important to understand that it did not go into this operation with the assumption that eventually that America will come, to its aid and
mhm,
join this operation. It may and it may not, but they
mhm,
definitely plan this to do this in a
mhm,
total and complete way on its own if it needs to, and that
mhm,
includes taking out Fordo. And I know there's
mhm.
questions about how they're going to do that, with bunker buster bombs, but there are very creative ideas, let's just say, that they have up their sleeves.
Yeah, we had Colonel Ron Bannis, a squadron B-1 squadron commander, formerly on, and he said Israel definitely has the capability. It just may take a few days longer because they don't have the large bunker buster B-2 capability. But one thing that the Iranians are not happy about, and is funny, the Kremlin came out this morning saying, that this needs to, I guess, stop. But they've been silent, and I found that interesting because I think probably Trump and Putin are trying to make some deal here and find a way forward. What do you think?
I mean, that's definitely possible. I mean, there's
Hmm.
been some public rhetoric, there's been remarks to that effect.
Hmm.
I just think Russia really doesn't have too many cards to play at this point
Hmm.
in Iran, kind of like what you saw with the collapse of Syria. Nobody expected that. Everyone thought,
Hmm.
the Russians had a presence there. I
Hmm.
mean, the entire Syrian government collapsed in 11 days. And then Israel, of
Hmm.
course, went in and destroyed, what remained of Assad's army, which actually allowed this mission to go forward in Iran itself. So I just think that Russia's tied up right now itself, obviously, in Ukraine. And there are ramifications for Russia because a lot of the UAVs that they've been getting and using against the Ukrainians are supplied, of course, by the Iranian Shahed drones. But I think that they're also kind of reading the tea leaves and kind of seeing where this is most
Hmm.
likely going towards. So I really don't see what Russia's interest really would be at this point in propping up, the Iranian regime, which would be
Yeah.
a Herculean task to prop up in a regime that's in the state that it's in.
What are you hearing? I know you're close to Team Trump. What are you hearing inside? There's been a lot of, I guess, drama in the media, but what do you think is going on there?
I mean, definitely Trump. Uh, Obviously, there was official understandings of what Israel was going to do.
Hmm.
Trump is definitely very impressed by, and he's expressed this by
Hmm.
Israel's success. He didn't obviously know how this was going to turn out up until now. How quickly Israel was to, gain complete air dominance. The operations that were able to be pulled off. So, Trump really sees this as an first of all, as you know, very impressive actions taken by the IDF, and second, I mean, he's now put in a position, I mean, that he has to really make a decision. He also realizes, and talk about the Russians and the Chinese, that they're also watching what is
Hmm.
America going to do, how are they going to react. This has ramifications for Taiwan, for Ukraine, for this is why there's a much larger picture than just the nuclear program in and of itself, of how this, you know, comes to an end, and for America itself and its standing in the world.
Let's talk about that, because China's been kind of quiet too. What do you think they may or may not get from this operation as far as geopolitical, I guess, stuff that they have to worry about or think about?
So it's really interesting. So China also has a relationship with a very close relationship with Israel. They
Hmm.
actually own major ports
Hmm.
in Haifa that was
Hmm.
attacked by the Iranians. And
Hmm.
then of course they've also played both sides. They have huge Belt and Road initiatives, infrastructure, you know, programs going on in Iran itself, using, you know, the Caspian Sea and other areas.
Hmm.
So, but I also think, kind of like Russia, China's also kind of just seeing this. I mean, they're not going to directly intervene either. I mean, China's also has, you know, major interest because they're the largest buyer of Iranian oil. So that's also, there's so many secondary, tertiary, major geopolitical ramifications for this. Um, but at this point, I mean, Israel just created a de facto reality right now that
Hmm.
it's really just all these, nobody really expected this to happen so quickly. So I think for China, for Russia, all these nations are really just kind of getting a grasp on what is happening and how to move forward, and also trying to gain certainty and clarity of what is going to be happening. I mean, this is not over with, and what's going to happen, I would say, in the next, you know, 7 days or less is really, you know, gonna really give us a strong indication of how this is going to play out.
Interesting. So you think there's, I mean, Israel has said it that there's going to be a lot more coming. I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, what we have
Mhm.
seen so far, from what I've heard, is probably about half of what is up their sleeves. Um, uh,
Interesting.
you know, that they Israel's been planning this not for, you know, months. Yeah, I mean, this has been decades. I mean, this has been a cornerstone of the Prime Minister of Israel. I mean, he's been talking about this for 30 years more, and they've been planning operationally this for decades. Obviously, those plans have constantly been, you know, being modified,
Mhm.
but you know, this is really a moment where, if this is dealt with, you know, the way that Israel wants it to be, Israel can really be a superpower in the region. I mean, and
Mhm.
the Gulf states also, this has tremendous ramifications for all the Gulf states. I mean, there really can be finally actual stability and peace in the Middle East. That American, you know, presence there of 40,000 troops can now, if this is actually dealt with, can now pivot, actually talk about pivoting to Asia and China. This can allow America to pivot and concentrate its forces on Asia, finally having stability and control in the Middle East. I mean, this is stuff that literally never existed in the history of, you know, the modern
Yeah.
geopolitics.
What about the Gulf states? They've been kind of quiet too. I mean, what are you hearing from them? I mean, they've been historically Shia Islam has been in opposition to Sunni Islam, which most of the Gulf states are. So, are they? Do you think they're happy? Or are they just kind of waiting to see what happens? What do you
I
think?
mean, I definitely think they're happy. I mean, they kind of also still are waiting. I mean, they
Hmm.
see how this comes to a conclusion. If this comes to a conclusion with, you know, a stable Iran without a nuclear weapon, I mean,
Hmm.
that's a dream for all these Gulf Arab states. Also, of course, they do have to worry about, you know, Iran being cornered and taking certain, you know,
Hmm.
actions that can have direct ramifications for them on major bases that are in the Gulf states, targeting U.S. bases in Qatar, in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia. So on the one hand, you know, they still have to be on the, you know, pretty alert for, you know,
Yeah.
any sorts of kinetic actions that Iran might take. But I think ultimately they're not saying it overtly right now, but they would actually love for Israel to succeed.
That's yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well. What about the Strait of Hormuz? Do you Do you think they have the capability at this point to even do anything to shut that down and hurt world global trade?
I think they do, and there's been some actual interesting articles written about this. Where
Hmm.
I mean, even if they were to do it, I really think it would not be a long-term situation. You're talking about
Hmm.
maybe a couple weeks at the most. America definitely would get involved at that point,
Hmm.
clean it up, and
Hmm.
I really think it would be a short-term event. So Iran really is, I mean, running out of options. I mean, there's still a lot that can happen. Iran can, I mean, first of all, if possibly assemble and test a nuclear weapon is still, in the realm of
Hmm.
possibilities.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
I think that's likely at all. They could use a crude device, which is,
Hmm.
that's the biggest concern of Israel and the West right now, is actually something of that nature. Um, but well, a lot's going to be happening, and I think even Trump came out today and
Hmm.
said he's talking about unconditional surrender. He's using phrases and terms that never was literally in the vernacular of American foreign policy up in ever. So this is what we're seeing as history unfold.
So we're getting reports right now that Israel is letting Iranian aircraft land in Oman. So there may be some movement on the negotiation side. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I think Israel is okay. They're
Hmm.
fine with, as long as it's the same outcome. And I think
Hmm.
I've discussed this on the last time I was on the show with you, that Israel is fine with it, and so is Trump with a negotiated settlement. But what that negotiated settlement would look like is kind of like what we saw in Libya.
Hmm.
Complete, verifiable destruction of its nuclear program, and this, not. Allowing them to have any sort of enrichment program. All that's, I think, really off the table at this point. And we'll see what Iran's going to do. I mean, the regime is very weak. This is also going to be a very interesting moment, I think,
Hmm.
specifically for you and I that have been watching very closely,
Hmm.
major Iranian opposition groups. This is also a moment in history for them. What are they going to do with such a weakened, Ayatollah, the entire IRGC, the regime? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not an actual stated explicit goal right now of Israel to decapitate and create regime change, but I mean, they've been hinting very strongly that that's most likely going to be a secondary outcome of what's about to unfold. So I think to watch also the opposition within Iran very closely and the things that they're going to be saying is really important.
Well, there's news coming out right now that they did just attack Khomeini's bunker and that the president's plane has left Tehran. So yeah, I think the best outcome in my view is regime change on the ground with a group that the West can deal with, and get rid of the program and have a free and fair Iran. I met you, I think, at the one of the MEK events years ago, and I find it interesting that the U.S. government is not overtly supporting that group and they're supporting the monarchists. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that it's really time for them to wake up. I mean,
Hmm.
I think that the monarchist he's been very on his game as far as PR and being ahead
Yeah.
of, he's very strong in that
Hmm.
regard.
Hmm.
But the MBK, a lot of these resistant, especially the diaspora aspect of it, I'm not talking about the MBK in Iran,
Hmm.
more in what we saw, their headquarters in France and Albania, that it's time to pivot from conferences and talking about the reality is here. I mean, this is
Yeah.
it. This is the moment. What are you going to do? So they really need to kind of go from an institutional way of thinking to the reality is now here. And I hope that they have plans of action in place that they are going to be taking imminently.
It's time to step up and govern, essentially.
Exactly.
You know, it reminds me of that Saturday Night Live skit where the guys get marooned on the island and they form committees to like get rescued, and the ship rolls by and they say, "Oh, we got to make this report," and you know, so
No, it's true. So I mean, they have this is it.
yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting. I don't personally think that there's an appetite within Iran itself to see a return to, a monarchist kind of type of government. I think they're ready to kind of
Yeah,
transition.
I was talking to Colonel Manis. You could have, if the monarchists take power, you could have the MEK go against them again, because that was their original, formation, was to go against the Shah. So, that could
Yeah,
really be
yeah.
so that needs to be managed by the Trump administration. Anyway, anything else you want to get out? I really appreciate your time. I know you're extremely busy, and thanks for coming on.
No, I would just say really, keep a close eye on what's going on here. And also, I think it's important for Americans also to understand that I know that war, yes, can really turn into a lot of, secondary and tertiary kind of situations that nobody has foreseen. But it's right not to make analogies that this is not Iraq, this is not Afghanistan. I mean, Iran is a whole different, society beast. This is not to say that I'm pushing for whatsoever for America to get involved. I think America should do what it feels, that its interests are. But I think we're going to see a lot of history unfold. I mean, we've seen a lot, and I think now it's time to see it through. What is going to happen literally in the next, I would say, 7 days or less, is going to really determine the future of the Middle East for decades and decades to come.
Well, at a lot of those conferences of the resistance, they always say next year we're going to meet in Tehran. Maybe that will happen.
Yeah, it's a very strong, maybe. Yeah, we'll see who the leader of the transitional leader, I guess, would be of Iran. But I guess first things first is
Yeah.
dealing with what's in front of us. And
Well,
yeah.
I think we need to focus on getting this resistance, and I think that's where Trump needs to roll. Anyway, thanks for
Yeah,
your time, Josh. I really
my
appreciate it,
pleasure.
man. All right, take care, and
All
let's
right,
meet soon down in Florida. Take
looking
care.
forward. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
ciao.